All right, so we are online. We're almost on the hour, so it's 1 minute before we get started. Let's wait for a little bit, so we'll be punctual and start at 9 a.m. / 10 a.m. depending from which geography you're coming from. Yeah. So now is the good time to fill up your coffee cup. Exactly. I see that attendees are coming online at a very nice pace. So welcome again for those of you who just joined. We're still waiting for the clock to chime, and then we can get started on the webinar discussing about Copilot AI and all the other very interesting things. Lasse, I think we're upon the hour. So and I see that people are coming in, and welcome again for those of you who just joined. But we want to mind the time and really appreciate the fact that you guys joined, and we have a large audience for us, which is really great. But maybe we should get started.
Yes, we should. Thank you, Ville. And welcome to the future, or welcome to this webcast about the future, about all the great possibilities that comes with AI, and maybe we can give you some hints on how to get ready for the AI revolution. So before we begin, we will monitor the chat and try to answer as many questions that we can. We have a packed agenda today, but if there's time, we'll do a Q&A at the end of this hour. So first, welcome to all. My name is Lasse Nordvik-Vede, and I'm the Consulting Director or Senior Advisor at Innofactor. I'm also an Office Apps and Services MVP, been so for 9 years. And with me, I have two gentlemen in a room in Finland. Janne, why don't you present yourself?
Yeah, so Janne Nevalainen from Finnish Innofactor, and my areas of expertise are, as the slide says, cybersecurity, but of course also all this modern work, Microsoft 365 ecosystem is also something that I do daily. And Ville. Yeah, hey, good morning from my perspective as well. Ville Vakkilainen from also Innofactor Finland Data and Analytics. Have been with Innofactor for past 10 years and 16 plus years in the Microsoft ecosystem for the love of data and AI. I guess that's what I do, and have had the pleasure of diving into the world of AI since the last couple of years, and a deep dive beginning of this year is probably where I stand. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, you'll hear more from these guys after I've done with my talk. So the topics of today is a brief walkthrough of AI, understanding it, history of it, and what we are actually going to talk about in this seminar. Then we'll talk more deeply how to prepare for Copilot with what we know already, and we're going to look into some of the other aspects of Azure Open AI and other products like that. Okay, so first of all, we need to understand AI and what is AI. AI is a vast field of different technologies, but in essence, it's about having computer system or machines that are capable of performing tasks that usually every other employee could do to help us get rid of mundane work tasks. And maybe in the long run, it will even take over a lot of jobs like driving cars and trucks. Who knows where this road will end? But right now, it's about making sure that or creating stuff that boosts our reach of the data that we have and make it in a better make better responses, make better ideas, and basically just perform these tasks for us. It consists of a lot of various subfields. I mean, machine learning, there are language models, there are different kind of processing system, computer visions, there's a lot of robotics. We're not going to deep dive on all the different aspects of AI. We're going to focus on a certain aspect. But the goal is to create these intelligent machines that are capable of learning our behavior, learning others' behavior, to make its own reasoning to some extent. Try to understand what we're actually asking and not just listening to the word that we're asking, and do problem solving for us so we can spend our valuable time on something else than spending our hours in spreadsheets when Copilot can do the things for us. Right, so a brief history of AI. Why is this such a hot topic right now? Because AI is nothing new. If we look at it, we could arguably say that Alan Turing probably was one of the first great names within AI with his code cracker during World War II. But the real kickoff of AI happened in Dartmouth in the summer of '56, where a group of highly intelligent people gathered and spent weeks on discussing how or was discussing things that now have turned into the field of AI, I would say. The first logic program, the logic theorist, was actually an outcome of this, where they had a simple model of how you could pre-populate a program with answers, and by asking it, you'd get some kind of intellectual response. ELIZA is another known piece of software that was actually more of a simulation tool that you could feed scripts in much the same manner it was used to study medicine. And moving from '66 to all the way to '97, we have the Deep Blue, who was actually able to beat Garry Kasparov in his first game. Now we know that Kasparov actually beat Deep Blue in several chess games after this, once he realized how Deep Blue was thinking. So Deep Blue is no way, wasn't really smarter than Kasparov, but it was able to calculate much faster and much better than Kasparov until Kasparov got his head around. After that, IBM developed Watson, which is a question answering software that was able to compete in Jeopardy. It had to be given some parameters because as humans in a game show, they tend to just push the button and then think of the answer after that. So they had to give the machine a couple of seconds to read and understand the question before they let the competitors try to use the buzzer. But given those seconds head start, it beat finalists in Jeopardy. They tested it on the US Senate, and it beat a lot of the senators there. That moves us on to GPT. Number 3 was released in 2020. Number 4 has just been released, or has been tested for a while, but has been released publicly now. And we have Copilot for GitHub that was released in 2021. I know Bill is going to take us through a lot of more Microsoft releases later on today. But the thing is that AI is nothing new, and probably you've been using AI for a while without thinking about it. A lot of us use tools like Siri on our iPhones, or we use Google Home, or we use other things that we talk to and expect answers. And all of these are, in one way or another, slightly related to artificial AI, or artificial intelligence. Now, I'm going to narrow down the scope of our talk today, and we are going to talk about GPT, which is generative pre-trained transformers. We're not going to discuss how to build all of these language models and how to build all of this data center where you can have your own AI. We're going to talk about these pre-built models like Chat GPT and Open AI. So it refers to models capable of recognizing, understanding, transform, and generate the content. We're talking about text, we're talking about images, music, or videos, At least in the office space, it's about giving this engine a lot of information and then use that information to create even better answer or better descriptions or faster responses and things like that. Now, these models, they use deep learning techniques and large amounts of training data. Don't be fooled. There have been people sitting for years feeding these engines information and clicking yes and no, rating answers as they've been given in order to train the model. And it is not a just Google search on steroids, even though it's referred to that. I do that sometimes myself, but in order to have these responses that are human-like, you need to train the model, and that's what's been done. It can be used to improve images, it can be used to create images, it could be used for music generation, art generation, data augmentation if you have a lot of data you want to improve on, and of course, as you've probably seen with Copilot and Chat GPT, you can have some input of text and you can have a better answer back. One of the applications is throwing in your resume and trying to get a better, more professional-like resume, things like that. Easy to explain, but I just wanted to show you here that AI is a huge area, and we're talking about a tiny little bit that is centered around large language models. Present state of GPT? Well, the thing is that whether you like it or not, it's everywhere already. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of applications, websites, and services out there that already uses AI and provides AI. And that is why it's so important for organizations to get their head around and have a strategy on this and understand what it is for, what it can be used for, how to use it, and how not to use it, right? So it's powered by the natural language. The core, now I need to update this slide in a couple of weeks because the core of some engines are 3.5. We know that Bing Enterprise is based on Chat GPT 4. Chat GPT 4 publicly you need a subscription for. The free one is 3.5, but it has a huge understanding of the language, and it's been trained to answer in a human-like nature. Yeah. Now, with AI, with new technology, there's a lot of common questions and concerns, and I'm gonna highlight some of them. The data privacy and confidentiality, and this is where organizations need to think how and why and if they're going to use AI, because what data do you put where? What kind of data is being harvested by the engines? So how do you know that the data stays secure? How do you know it's GDPR compliant? And that is, there's no easy answer to this. Everyone needs to take a hard look at the services they use and study how they honor these services. If you look at Chat GPT, for example, it clearly states that if you feed it information, it will actually learn from that information. If you look at Bing Enterprise, it states that it's not a learning model. So if you feed it information, it won't learn from that. It won't harvest that information. Things like that needs to be considered. It comes to the same thing with intellectual property. There have been leaks of IP already because some employee thought he'd improve some code or improve some information and fed it into a publicly known AI engine, and guess what? That code was no longer intellectual property because it was widespread. It was others were able to get hold of that same information. So you need to know, you need to control where people are using and what people are using. Accuracy and bias is also a great concern. I mean, how do we know that the founders of OpenAI and Chat GPT aren't biased? How do we know that the trained models isn't trained to prefer women or prefer men or prefer blue or prefer black or whatever? So the thing of checking your data and and the data sources and validate the data and data sources, it doesn't go away. It actually becomes even harder now to figure out if the data you're getting from a public engine is right, correct or not. And then there's the lack of contextual understanding. We say artificial intelligence, but it's not an intelligent being. So when I speak, when I talk, when we discuss things between 2 and 2 and 4 and 4, whatever, there's always this facial expressions and everything else that comes into play when we ask questions. The engine doesn't know the context of the question unless you give it a really good description of what you want. So if you've been playing around with the models already, creating images or creating text, you realize if you input a simple query, you'll get really vague results. If you, as I told Lily yesterday, if you write a novel, you'll actually get pretty good pictures out if you want to generate an image, just to say. And then there's the worry of inappropriate content generation, which is a general concern. Can this be used to create abusive material or things like that? So, is your organization ready? Well, I encourage everyone to sit down and have a real hard talk about the company strategy. What is it? How does it fit into business? What areas do we think we can use it to improve on, and what areas should we not improve on? There's just been a survey out, and it said that 75% of companies are prepared to block and deny its employer to use AI altogether. Now, don't fool yourself. If you do that, users and employers are stupid. They will go out and use public services. So have a really hard think about if you want to deny it or not, right? It's this shadow IT ghost that will be hunting you if you deny it completely. Now, you have to raise user awareness around the topics and the concerns about data privacy, about everything. You need to educate yourself, you need to educate your employees, you need to educate the organization. And then you have to build the user policies. I say you may not, I wouldn't recommend denying it entirely, but have clear user policies written on how AI should and should not be used. Emphasize on the importance of security. And then experiment with it. Start small. Start testing internal small builds in Azure Open AI, or you can use public services if you're sure that you're not using any data of concern, of course, but trying to understand how it works and what it works like. Enterprise Bing, for example, is already available, and I would say it's fairly safe under the context that it is clearly stated that it doesn't harvest your question, it doesn't learn from what you're saying, what you're doing. Enterprise Bing is really Google on steroids. It's the one element that made me switch from Google to Bing lately, is that you can use it as a search engine and it will give you good answers if you're trying to create content out of it. And then improve and expand over time. Gradually roll out in the areas you think it's appropriate, and choose the workforce that will use it. I'm not saying that AI will be for everyone. Maybe just a specific part of the organization will have benefits from using AI for now. Now, are you ready for Microsoft Copilot? Well, it depends on your data quality, and your data quality is important, and it all comes down to your data quality. Because the input or the output is only as good as the inputs. Copilot will work and improve and help you on the basis of the data within your organization. And unless you then have been using OneDrive, SharePoint, Viva, Teams, and everything else to store your data, it won't be able to find that data. If you store things on Dropbox, guess what? Copilot won't find it. So this is about how you use the tools in order to feed information in so you can have that information back out. Versions and duplicates, it's a mess in a lot of organizations. How many versions do we have of the template for sales at Innofactor? Well, I'll tell you honestly, maybe too many, but We're aware of it. We're working on it. But the thing is that you need to make sure that the documents are up to date and they're where they should be, and there shouldn't be a lot of duplicates. Now there's legacy information. Again, I'll take the sales template as an example. We've made a new template for 2023. What have you done with the templates for 2022, 2021, 2020? Are they still available? If you use Copilot, Copilot won't know the difference. It will just bring out whatever it thinks is right. You need to make sure it's archived and not available for Copilot. Access control. There's a huge concern that a Copilot will see everything. No, Copilot works in the way that it sees what the user has access to. So just make sure that the user doesn't have access to HR documents, and he won't find that HR documents or contracts or whatever it shouldn't be able to have. But again, in my experience, a lot of organizations have migrated to SharePoint, and they've totally neglected the fact that they need to think about security. They've just hidden the documents in library that the users don't see usually. So data governance is the key. Right, Jana, this is your turn.
Yeah, thank you, Lasse. And now is, I guess, the most exciting part of the webinar where we change the presenter. So let's see that we get the screen ready here.
Did I do it right? I think I tried to switch to you. Did you get it?
Yeah, we're working on it. So let's see. Now we have it, and here we go. Back on the share. Okay, yeah. Can you put the presentation on? So I get the mouse over there. We're doing it here as well. All right. So maybe we can switch places so I don't have to read so much. Okay, so a few words about the Microsoft Copilot, which I think is on lots of people's agenda on this fall. So getting ready for the Microsoft Copilot. And if we think about what the Copilot is, this is actually a straight quote from Microsoft webpage. So Copilot combines the power of large language models with your data and apps to turn your words into the most powerful productivity tool on the planet. So what it does is that Copilot uses AI to leverage data that you have and in your context to turn your work into more creative work that you can do. And this is something that is coming right now, and this is something that lots of organizations are interested. So, and actually there is you can say that there is a Copilot for everything almost today. You have, for example, our Copilot for you are going to have a Copilot, for example, for Word, for PowerPoint, for Outlook, for example. So I think that this is something that is going to change our work fundamentally. And how this thing is going to work is that, of course, you have lots of data nowadays in a Microsoft 365. You have lots of different apps. You have a OneDrive, you have OneNote, Power BI, lists, SharePoint sites, Whiteboard, Outlook, and so on, so on, so on. So you have lots of different data sources. And of course, you also have permissions. For example, you have Microsoft 365 groups, security groups, distribution groups, etc. So you have lots of different data and lots of different permissions in your organization. And this all comes up to Copilot. And this is something that needs to be taken care of, because as Lasse said before, that Copilot uses data that is in Microsoft ecosystem with your permissions. But maybe the problem is that is all the permissions in the organization done well. If we think about how much Microsoft 365 has expanded and grown in the last years, the question is that do we have, for example, some forgotten teams that everybody has forgotten about a few years ago, SharePoint sites with a little bit more oversharing that should be, organizational sharing links that nobody knows about, for example, and so on. So there are lots of different possible data sources that can provide some sensitive information, but the organization just has forgotten about it. So I'm pretty sure that Lasse, at least you remember, and people in the audience who have been long enough with Office 365, you remember that Dell effect that happened years ago. So Dell was, and actually is still, a product that is found in the Office 365. And what the Dell did and does is that it Dell's information in Microsoft 365 and tries to find information, content, people that are relevant, for example, for you, Ville.
Indeed.
Yeah. And it tries to show you different things from your organization that might be interesting for you. And what happened is that the Dell effect was that the Dell started showing stuff that people shouldn't be seeing. For example, HR documents, some board meeting memos, and etc. And people were horrified on the Dell, and they thought that the Dell is broken. It shows documents and stuff that you shouldn't see. But the problem originated on the sharing side. So there could have been, for example, SharePoint sites that were open for everybody in the organization, but nobody knew about it. There were company-wide sharing links that nobody knew about, so lots of open hidden data. And actually, Dell just did what it's supposed to do. So it's tried to find the data that was interesting for you on your user context. And the big question is that are we going to have a Dell effect version 2023 once we have the Copilot? Because just as Lasse said, it's important to govern your data and check that your data is only available to people who should have access to that. But for example, if we take Teams, for example, many organizations rush into Teams, start using Teams, and maybe that compliance governance side was left to be answered on some another day. So
maybe if you look at the times of COVID, lots of organizations actually they didn't have time to do that.
Yeah.
They just needed to have something to support the remote work, and
and it was
maybe today is a good time.
Yeah. Now is the last time to do this. So what can we do? Well, here is a good news that you can actually use Microsoft's own tools for this. And of course, this is something that is heavily dependent on what license you have on Microsoft 365. For example, Microsoft 365 Business Premium users have different tools to use than, for example, Microsoft 365 EFAB users. So this is heavily license dependent, but regardless of license, there is usually something that you can do to use to govern your data. And of course, Microsoft Purview is something that comes into mind first here. So using and utilizing the compliance features in M365 licenses gives you different opportunities to protect your data internally also. So for example, if we think about the different tools, is Purview Audit, find data, e-discovery, using a compliance manager and sensitivity labels to find and label your data that you have in your organization. So for example, only people that should see those sensitive HR documents are allowed to use it. And of course, data loss prevention, data lifecycle management, retention labels. We get rid of those documents that shouldn't be there anymore is important. So we have lots of different tools to use in Microsoft Purview that can help us to protect the data in the cloud that we are using very heavily today. And if we think that what can we do to secure our environment other than these technical things, is that of course we need to have action and plan. So of course the first thing that we need to do is that we identify the sensitive data using, for example, the compliance tools in our organization. But of course this is something that of course organizations need to take a deep look at. Do we have those old teams that we are using? How is our SharePoint site user rights given, for example? Review our current policies. What is our policies regarding data and how people can use data in our organization? And of course, clarifying suitable technologies. So what technologies can we use, for example, that we haven't yet implemented in our organization? So of course, taking action. So we protect the data, we check those user rights, for example. We are starting to use the modern security tools. And of course, training users is paramount, so that users know how to use the tools, what tools can we use for AI, for example, in our organization, and how to use them. And finally, of course, managing the data, so that this is continuous process. Data governance, for example, you're governing your data continuously, managing your policies change, you have new policies that you need to implement, and of course this continuous monitoring that everything is as it should be in your organization. And this is really crucial for the organizations to do right now. And if this is something that might feel a bit overwhelming in many organizations, and of course, we at Innofactor can help you. So we have already we have a Microsoft 365 Copilot readiness kit available that actually helps in all these steps, analyzing the data, helping you find the tools that you can use in your organization, actions, how we can secure the data, or what the different data sources, and this continuous service. So if you need in your organization help, for example, continuous data cataloging, monitoring, maintenance, we can help in all of these different areas. And if you like to find more information about our readiness kit, just head to innofactor.com/Copilot-Ready, and you can find more data from there. But hey, Bill, I think you also have something to say regarding our subject.
I do. Let's switch positions again. So we'll do the song and dance here.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, thanks Lasse and Janne. What a wonderful setting of the stage for me. Kind of, I'm a big believer of fail fast, and I think what we need to do today is get started. And you heard from Lasse talking about the GPT models and the public Chat GPT. What I want to raise on this slide is the fact that OpenAI relies on Microsoft Azure AI infrastructure. And what it means is that the stuff that you see in the public Chat GPT can also be built with the same Azure infrastructure, but only for you, for your organization. But we'll get back to that in just a bit. But like Lasse said, I wanted to showcase a little bit of kind of what's been happening, not from the 50s, rather than just beginning of this year in the Microsoft ecosystem. And I know that my slide is missing stuff because things move fast, but we have more than 15 different relevant releases, and now looking at this week's Dynamics 365 Sales and those kind of co-pilots even more. So I think we're close to 20 now. But I unfortunately did this picture or the one portion of the picture last week, so it is outdated. But I think that you get the drift really, that since Microsoft launched and kind of announced their partnership extension with OpenAI with $10 billion investment over multiple years. Since then, there's been a multitude of services from Microsoft relying in one shape or form with generative AI, starting from the Bing chats, which we touch base, to Dynamics 365, to Bing search in Windows 11, to Open AI services available in Azure, to Power Platform Copilots. Today we're talking about quite a lot about the Microsoft 365 Copilot, but again, obviously, Power Platform is a very good tool base if you want to build something on top of a platform, but still not start from scratch. And then we talked about security. So again, the kind of security Copilot is also coming. It'll be interesting to see what are the capabilities of that, adapting really fast to potential threats outside. And if you're a developer, or if your organization has pro developers, then the GitHub Copilot X is obviously something which will be interesting to you. Since then, also, let's underline the fact that the Bing Chat Enterprises, like Lasse talked, that's a really good tool to use internally in your organization. Then a couple of last ones is the Power BI Copilot, which will help you to get started on dashboards, not obviously just like any other Copilot, not potentially ready, but the starting point. And then the GPT-4 availability, that's big for us because we're working on quite a lot on the Azure Open AI platform. So kind of, this is a long list. How does this touch me? We wanted to turn this picture a bit around different stakeholders. So if in an organization, and I guess that's the reason why we're also talking about Microsoft 365 Copilot today, in an organization that probably touches all the roles. But if you're business, sales, marketing, if you're running Dynamics 365 already today, then those Copilots, especially the sales that was announced late last week, is going to be really interesting to you. If you're a citizen developer, then the Power Platform and then potentially Power BI Copilots will definitely be worth looking into. And then obviously, if you're working with any data, emails, words, PowerPoints, then the Microsoft 365 Copilot is definitely for you. I wrote one of my kind of favorite use case scenarios in Microsoft 365 Copilot, getting an email, summarizing that to Word, then saying to Copilot, hey, why don't you go and create 5 slides based on this for me? And again, let me underline the fact that these are not ready. So I wouldn't send this out to customer, but it's a very different story starting from 5 slides as opposed to blank or as opposed to template. So this will change a lot of things, I guess that's the message, and it will touch a lot of the stakeholders in different parts of the organization. Right, but again, as Janne pointed out, and also Lasse underlined the fact, trust is really paramount here. Microsoft Cloud runs on trust, and what does it mean if you create a GPT-based service in your own Azure subscription? It means that your data is your data. So it's not going to be available in any other tenant, but your tenant, you control how that's used. Your data is not used in any fine tuning. I know that's a very techie term, but that's what we AI people say when we say that there's a model, we fine tune it. It's not used to train the foundation AI models. So your IP, like you heard from Lasse, your IP is your IP. And finally, the data protection that we just heard from Janne, your data is protected by the most comprehensive enterprise compliance and security controls. So that's the reason why we say that, hey, give Azure Open AI a try, because then you can do scenarios and use cases with your data that you're hopefully not doing with the public Chat GPT. And what can be done? Some examples of, using content creation, write a tagline for ice cream shop. That's potentially, or any other content creation, very good starting point. But also it can help the data people and developers to some extent doing like SQL queries or creating pictures. A lot can be done. But kind of this is very theoretical. I want to bring us a bit more concrete and talk about InnoGPT that we've created. So basically, and I'll show a demo quickly on the same thing, switching monitors in just a bit. But I'll talk through what's happening here. So we have we have taken the Azure Open AI, embedded the Teams, embedded the UI in Teams, and then sort of given a simpler segue for the users to start using Azure Open AI. And let me just quickly change my screens. So going into monitor 3. Yep. And it's there. Perfect. So now we're live on the demo. And what I did is we basically fed this Azure Open AI instance a bunch of our own quality documentation. So it doesn't know the world, it doesn't know everything about Innofactor, but it knows our quality guidance and process guidance. And I asked the tool, what are the steps to start a project in Innofactor? And it gives me a fairly nice picture of what the PM needs to do. But what's more important, it gives me citations to documents that are referred to. So kind of the same thing that the Bing search does as well, but much more extensible, and also kind of can be set to see certain parts or user groups of documentation. And then what I did is like, okay, can you tell me what a PM needs to do at Innofactor, which still relies pretty much on the same documentation that the solution is finding, InnoGPT is finding. And then finally, I asked it to create a 5-bullet summary of the PM responsibilities. So similar capabilities than Chat GPT, but just internally. So none of the questions, none of the documents that are here are available to any other users. And maybe finally, if I ask this guy, who am I? Okay, I got a demo error. Sorry about that. What I know is it would answer that it doesn't know anything about me because there aren't any documents regarding myself in InnoGPT. And that's also the nice thing about the capability to select documents that you're showing is because there's a term called hallucination related with generative AI, and sometimes you get funny answers because you don't know what are the sources, and you have potentially, like Lasse said, you're talking in way too broad terms. So one of the approaches to get rid of that hallucination is saying that answer based only on the documents that you find, and that's what we do with the Azure Open AI-based approach. And we're really happy that also our customers are working closely together with us regarding the kind of starting points of AI and Azure Open AI, and this customer reference for Housing Finance Development Center in Finland, ARA, for short in Finnish, is that they actually are trying this kind of architecture and the same solution that I just showed you, InnoGPT, and basically they're currently rolling out a new way of lots of documentation, and their customer service is feeling that they might be overwhelmed with the user questions, and there's going to be some technical and some legal aspects on the questions. So they see that the GPT model really helps them, and we were also able to onboard them with the 4.0 model just recently. So we're looking forward to see really nice results out of that. Obviously, we're on the way, so we've started, and things are moving, like we all said, really fast in terms of AI. So let's see what we get. But I'm really confident that based on what we're seeing internally with our InnoGPT and then with our customers, that these kind of generative AI solutions will help you in the long term. I will skip the solution picture because I already showed it in the ARA case, but maybe kind of what can you do with Azure Open AI, or sort of what's possible. And I think the long answer is kind of, it's potentially not the one that you want to hear. You can do a lot, honestly. I mean, there are multitude of use cases that you could do, but because we wanted to help you guys out and tell a little bit about what's possible, we took 3 different scenarios. Back office operations, employee onboarding is probably one of the kind of lowest hanging fruits with this one. So something like I just showed you with if you have a process, how your company operates, you described it well, you have documentation related to that, feed that to the GPT model, and then it will help new employee onboarding, saying that, hey, yeah, how do I get the mobile phone? Where do I get the laptop? How do I find this in that room or whatever? And it's public information, so that's kind of also easy from a data security perspective.
Could you say that this is a little bit like a Power Platform, so that we can solve different business pains or business processes with this?
Yeah, that's a good analogy, I think. Yeah, definitely. It's a little bit of a Swiss knife. You can do a lot of things, and I think that's one of the nicest things about Azure Open AI is exactly the extensibility.
Yeah.
And if I think about kind of Copilot versus Azure Open AI, one thing that I can say is Azure Open AI is easier to extend. And if you've spent time creating, I don't know, a data warehouse, then probably you'd want that data warehouse to also, because the story behind the scenes goes like that's the single source of truth. Maybe you want that included in your AI model. Azure Open AI is a very natural way of plugging that into the discussion as well. If you're in the, let's say, legal arena, if you want to do stuff around either your in-house legal, or if you're an organization providing legal services, then research takes a lot of time. AI can summarize, it can scan through a lot of documentation really quickly, and it will help you to get to the research end outcomes really much faster. Document review, another one, kind of what are the differences between these documents. And again, if you're in professional services, just like we are, then training and knowledge sharing, for instance, is a very good way of using Azure Open AI. Like I said, there's a ton of use cases that could be done. These are just a couple of examples how to get started. But I think what's important is really kind of getting to the guise of how to start. And I think kind of our approach at Innofactor is that we always start with advisory. And Janne here had a really good example of the Copilot readiness kit. How do you get ready for Copilot, the kind of blue line in the middle? Or maybe potentially, Lasse talked about strategy. You need to have a hard think about the strategy. If you have the use cases already in hand, what's right for you? Because that's also a bit of a question mark for probably a lot of you guys online, because there's Azure Open AI, there's Microsoft 365 Copilots and a ton of other Copilots, there's Bing Enterprise Search. Which one is the right for me? And hey, let's not forget the green line on the picture as well. Azure Machine Learning, kind of if your data is such that you actually have lots of data in quantitative as opposed to qualitative form, maybe you actually want to build a machine learning model. That's what we're doing with a lot of our customers and have been doing for quite some time. Maybe even plugging, and I'm reaching out, plugging this ML model to a generative AI in front of it. So how to get both, best of both worlds, really. But in one shape or form, I think it's important to start soon, because this change, like we've been emphasizing from the beginning, it is coming and it's coming fast. So I think the important thing is that you need to be ready, get your organization ready, and make sure that the security is also in place, because it's really important to make sure that the efficiency is there, but also the security is there. So we're pretty much getting on the hour. We still have about 12 minutes to go, but just to summarize what we talked about today, we talked about the AI revolution, kind of where are we coming from? Was this all invented in January or maybe in 1956. What are the GPT essentials? How does it work? How it generates contents using deep learning? These are all the things that Lasse told us. Then Janne told us a little bit about Copilot preparation. How do you prep for using Copilot? How do you get started on that? Focus on the data quality and security. And then finally, I talked about Azure Open AI advisory and strategy.
Yeah, and maybe one thing that came into my mind about that slide is that you can't run away from AI today. So that, as Lasse said, that if you block AI in your company, you will find a way to use, for example, open AIs that are public. So that one thing is that I thought is that just start using it the best ways possible into your company and your needs.
Yeah, I think that's the right thing. I mean, it is behind the door, and also I guess we're a bunch of AI enthusiasts. There's risks involved that need to be carefully evaluated and mitigated. But I still think that kind of in mid to long term, there's way more value in working with AI than without.
Yeah.
We have a couple of polls that we'd like to share with you, and I'll start with the top one. So should be visible to you right now.
Yeah.
And it is. So kind of, if you'd be so kind and give us an answer on kind of, what are your thoughts on AI today? Have you already thought about the use cases and what's the scenario? So, and I see that the answers are coming in. So thank you, everybody. I see about 30% of you guys voted already, and you don't need to vote if you don't wanna, but obviously we appreciate your answers. I'll let this first poll run for a few seconds more and then close it off. Okay, thank you very much. And we'll continue with the line of questioning. So this is a very much Copilot focused webinar. It would be silly of us not to talk about Copilot. So let's fire up the second poll. What are your thoughts on Copilot? And again, as questions are coming in, maybe kind of a quick summary. For a second, I had there 100% yes, that I like. Now we're not anymore in 100%, but that I like. And I'll let this poll also run a few seconds so that you have enough time to vote. Okay, and then we have one more poll left for you guys online, which talks about Azure Open AI. So is this something new for you, or have you already perhaps tried it? And I'm seeing, while this is running, quite a lot of yes answers. So I wish we were all in the same room. It would be nice to talk about if you've used GPT 3.5 or 4 models, but that's something we can definitely take online and offline, sorry, and talk more about it. But hey, I'll close the last poll. That's it from polls. And I guess we have some questions,
a few questions
online, and we also have time. So we still have about 7 minutes time.
Yeah,
so you want to pose, but let's start the ones that we have.
Yeah, so if you have questions, please please send them to us. But let's see, what do we have here? There's a few questions about are we going to share the slides after the webinar?
Yes, definitely.
That is yes. So
yes.
Yes. So you are going to get them afterwards. And there's a question that when is this available in Europe? There is no time for this, timestamp for this, so I don't know when was the question then. But if we think about Azure Open AI, that is already in the market.
Yeah.
And if we talk about Microsoft 365 Copilot, it is something yet to be announced. So we don't know, and those who know won't tell.
Yeah.
So that is something left to be discovered.
And to elaborate on the Europe portion on Azure Open AI, so just so that it's clear, the customer reference that I had out on the slides, it's actually run from a European data center. So if you want to, you can run Azure Open AI GPT models in Europe today. So that is already out there. The data centers that you can select are not all the data centers, but regardless, in Europe, in the GDPR compliant data center, that's what we can do today.
Yeah. Let's see. Can Azure Open AI communicate with or instruct Copilot?
Potentially, yes. We would probably need to talk the use case and scenario a little bit more, but sort of yes. There's always capabilities. So when we're talking about kind of a AI talking to another AI,
yeah,
it's probably pretty advanced scenario. So that wouldn't be my starting scenario. Usually the simple ones with simple use cases work best, but obviously we've given it quite a lot of thought internally, and that's probably the way in some use cases it will run in the future.
Yeah. What M365 license will include the Copilot? Yeah, this is actually something that needs to be bought separately. So as far as I know that Lasse, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but there is no license that already covers Copilot. So that's a separate license. And if I remember correctly, it was $30 per month per user.
That's right.
Yeah, that is correct. That is correct. But Microsoft hasn't announced everything yet. But the Copilot, the good Copilot stuff, as I call it, will be licensed as a separate license, and you will need a base license of Microsoft 365, E3, E5 kind of type of license. Don't expect Office 365 license users to get to be eligible for the Copilot. But there will be, and we have already seen there are a lot of these small features that utilizes Graph that will be available with the basic licenses. I mean, if you look at Teams today, and if you reply to a person who's asking for, do you have the let's say you and I had a discussion, do you have the presentation for tomorrow? There's already this suggested file feature, right? That's not very intelligent, but it shows us what it's going to do. It's going to get through Graph, get information. It knows about Janne, knows about Lasse, knows about presentations that we co-created on, and it will probably suggest that for me to present to you. Things like that will be in all licenses, but if you want to Copilot, where you open up PowerPoint and you click on the Copilot button, you will have to pay that license of $30 for a user. So I've said it before, and I'll say it again, I don't think Copilot will be for everyone in the organization, and that's why the organization needs to have a strategy and discuss which part of the organization can really benefit from this, and then invest there.
Yeah, definitely. Let's see. How would you describe the connectivity to Azure Open AI with other tools such as email, calendar, or chat apps?
A good question. Again, this is kind of a maybe a positioning question. I'll take that one. So if we're talking about email, calendar, those couple of examples, then probably again, the Microsoft 365 Copilot is actually more fit to that purpose because, like Lasse mentioned online, for those of you who aren't tech savvy, Graph API is what Copilot uses, and that gets to user context. So if we had in this meeting some file shared, then that API would know that. So yeah, probably, especially email is something that I wouldn't honestly use the Azure Open AI quite a lot. But where I emphasize it's important, if you're waiting to get Copilot, it'll take time. So if you want to get ready, you can get most of the stuff that Copilot does already today, at least the large language model portion of it, using Azure Open AI. So that can help you get Copilot ready if you then headed towards Copilot going forward.
Yeah. Is it possible that Internet GPT use data also from outside Internet without sending any internal data outside?
Sure. Yeah. Again, good question. I mean, what we're doing, I went through the architecture model really quickly, but we're basically using search then to send stuff to the large language model, the Azure Open AI. So you could have any data source. If it's an external one as well, you can plug it in, so internal, external data sources. But I guess the key point is that it's available for your organization, or you can limit who gets access to that.
Yeah, thank you. And actually, that was the last question. So we are right on the clock here.
This is perfect.
Perfect.
It's nice to be on time. And hey, a big thanks to you guys online for such a lively webinar. Lots of questions, lots of activity, and I really like that. That's the way we both with Janne and Lasse online, we like to run the webinars. Big thank you.
Yes, thank you, and have a great day.
Reach out to us if you want to talk about Azure Open AI, Copilots, Copilot-Ready kits, all that stuff. Big thanks.
Yes, thank you.
Bye-bye.